This is our third time speaking on this topic. I think it's the first time we hit on one topic 3 times. Are we correct? Am I correct with this, Macho?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
3 straight days, by the way. It's
three
been 3.
straight days. Yo,
Yeah.
this it's a lot to this topic. I'm in the middle of knowing some of the history, but learning a whole different layer of this conversation. Right? Like there's a lot to uncover here. And again, as always, you got to look beyond the media, man. As always, nothing changes. Nothing changes. I think you
Do
cut
you
off.
do
We
you have
lost.
your drink?
Are you
Because
back?
we're about to get your seatbelts fastened because we got a lot to discuss today. Get your drinks, guys. Let's do this, and let's
Travis in
go.
the house. What up, Felicia? I see ya. Welcome, welcome. We out here. Yeah. We excited today. We are continuing on Ukraine and Russia conflict. We got a special guest today. Stay tuned. Y'all see him pop in the next few minutes. But we're about to break this down even deeper. And I think we brought somebody who has, I would say, more knowledge than us for sure on this situation. Just hearing him speak about this, man. So I'm really excited to hit it from this angle. So we've been kind of uncovering, peeling back layers. And I think now we're getting straight to the actual meat of a lot of what we've been uncovering. So I'm excited about that. So let's get into it, man.
Obviously, what is going on in Ukraine? What is going on? Why did Russia invade Ukraine? I think that's what you're asking. Is that correct?
Right. Yes.
So to a certain extent, you asked the right guy. I am of the ripe old age. Number one. Number two, and far more important, that's my field. I speak Russian. I studied Soviet Union as my major at graduate school. So even with all of that, I don't guarantee that my analysis is accurate. I can't read minds. However, I think that there is one overriding reason for the invasion, and that is Vladimir Putin's desire to reconstitute the Russian Empire.
That's interesting. That's our first clip there. We're about to feed y'all with some different perspective clips. So that's Dennis Prager right there talking about how Russia wants to bring back the USSR. So we'll see what our guest also has to say about that. But stay tuned, man. That's interesting.
We also have Savory, another person who made an analysis about the Ukraine Russian crisis or invasion, for that matter, and that was the former President Nixon's grandson had something to say. Check this out.
Yeah.
Not communicating with a communist nation. For more is member of a board of directors of the Nixon Foundation and the grandson of President Richard Nixon, Christopher Nixon Cox. Thanks again for joining us this morning.
Great to be on with you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, Christopher, as we reminded our viewers yesterday, you have extensive knowledge in Russian policy. So I want to get your perspective this morning on what is happening in Ukraine right now.
Well, I think the situation is becoming very dangerous. And I think that, as we've just heard, it looks like that Kiev is being surrounded and could fall relatively soon. But I think that Putin has bitten off more than he can chew at this point, because while he may be able to put troops into Kiev or control the airport, maybe even switch governments, Ukraine is a very complicated place, and the Ukrainian people are strong. They're strong fighters, and he's going to have to deal with an insurgency. Certainly, if he tries to take the whole country, the western part of Ukraine is full of Catholics, and Catholic Ukrainians will fight tooth and nail to push out the Russian invaders. So I think he's bitten off a lot here. Ukraine is a large country, 42 million people, larger than the size of Texas. And that's going to be very difficult for him to try and control. And I think ultimately it will be unsuccessful.
Yeah, they're prepared to.
Now that's interesting.
Right.
So that's interesting. So Christopher Nixon thinks it's going to be unsuccessful. I actually haven't heard that take there. And yeah, that's interesting right there. Wow, that speaks for itself, Macho.
When I saw that this morning, I couldn't believe he said that it's going to pave to be unsuccessful. Out of everyone's commentary, the former president, great grandson, Christopher Nixon, says he bitten off more than he can chew, and he's going to be unsuccessful. Unbelievable! That's the first time I've heard somebody say that in this conflict.
Let's take it to the former president. Yeah, I said former president. I don't even think
big question mark now. Now, I thought it was pretty straightforward. In the old days, it was, but not so much anymore. Listen to this.
Sanctions clearly have not been enough to deter Vladimir Putin to this point. What is going to stop him? How and when does this end? And do you see him trying to go beyond Ukraine? And a second question I'll just give to you now. This statement that he gave last night, the threat that he gave, the West will face consequences greater than any you have faced in history. Is he threatening a nuclear strike?
I can't believe he's smiling right now.
I have no idea what he's threatening. I know what he has done, number one. And number two, no one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening.
No one expected the sanctions from preventing anything from happening? That was the whole point, we thought. I know I heard that before from this administration. Take a look at this.
No one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening.
The purpose of the sanctions has always been and continues to be deterrence.
The purpose of the sanctions, in the first instance, is to try to deter Russia from going to war.
The president believes that sanctions are intended to deter.
They're meant to prevent and deter a large-scale invasion.
We want them to have a deterrent effect.
The sanctions are designed in the first instance to try to deter Russia from taking further aggression.
As well as our efforts to both try to deter Russia through sanctions.
If you pull the trigger on that deterrent, well, then it doesn't exist anymore as a deterrent.
All right.
It's supposed to be a deterrent, but he says, but the president is saying something different from the rest of the administration. Greg Kelly nailed that. What do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I like how we're popcorning a lot of this and we're going into this final clip before our guest comes in because it gives people a good opportunity to just see what everyone's saying out there. Of course, not everyone, but a good census of like the different ideas out there. So yeah, that one speaks for itself. Like we'll see what we get into there.
Let's check this last one out about the effects of the sanctions to the American, I guess to us Americans.
With regards to trade, one particular thing that has increased in price over just the past day or so is fertilizer. The United States imports a lot of fertilizer from Russia, so since that trade is likely to be sanctioned, or maybe it already has been sanctioned, I just haven't picked it up yet, prices for fertilizer go up. Prices for fertilizer have already gone up in the international sphere, and as we've been talking about in our other briefs, there has been a mass global fertilizer shortage of all kinds of fertilizers. So when the prices for
and so Savory, I mean, think about it. We got Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager's thought process is what Russia or what Putin's approach is. He wants to reestablish. He believes wholeheartedly his ambition is to reestablish the USSR.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go to the former
Nixon.
President's grandson saying they will be unsuccessful. He bitten off more than he could chew. And then we go to And then we go to Greg Kelly nailed the president, the current president. You said former, the current president,
Yeah, sorry.
right? He nailed it with the idea of what sanctions are supposed to do. But then we have other people saying what sanctions, how they will affect us as Americans.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
this right here cannot be overlooked. And
yeah.
I'm glad we opened up with this.
And this is interesting. Before we introduce our guest here today, is that I personally, right, I want to share this. Never thought that sanctions were going to be enough, right? It's a list of things, right? So I can't wait for our guest to open us up on his thoughts on why this move is happening, right? Like the reason behind this move, right? That's going to be pretty interesting because I think there's many moving pieces here that we're definitely missing. So.
All right, for our Keep It 100 segment, we are finally here with our special guest, Roderick Threat, CEO of Black Patriot Media Group, Executive Director of Torch of Liberty Podcast Network, host of the Southern Liberty Radio Show podcast. Without further ado, let's bring on Mr. Threats.
Welcome. What's good, fellas? How you doing?
Welcome, man. We excited right now.
We are happy to have you here.
Get the barbecue grill out with the
drinks, we're a bit hyped because we seen you on these topics in and out, hitting it from different angles. So we kind of pretty excited to open this up and get into some of these thoughts because I think you were pretty on point with the way you were breaking stuff down, and we'll let the audience decide what they think of how you're gonna break some of this down. Yeah, but yeah, man. So we wanted to open up, Macho and I, with this first initial question to give you the floor, right, on your input behind this move, right? So we kept it a bit vague to give you room to see where you want to go with this. But when you think about what just happened, how the media is covering, what's your input behind why Russia's doing this or why they did this right now already?
With the broader scope of it is to clean up deep corruption that has been in Crimea literally since 1654. I mean, this goes back historically, way back, like back, like way back. Like we're talking like Ottomans and the czars of Russia.
Wow.
Right. Because if people go look at the maps of Crimea, right, not Crimea, but of Ukraine back in 1654, 1656, etc. Ukraine is probably no bigger than a pea, and we're talking, if you're including Kyiv in the center, we're talking probably almost 50 square miles around Kyiv was actually Ukraine back in the day. All the other land was owned by the Poles. It was owned by Germany at one point, etc. You know, on up the line, right?
So after the USSR, after that split, you're telling me Ukraine wasn't as big as it is now?
No. We're talking 1654.
Even you're talking way before that.
Yeah, way back. We're talking 17th century at this point, right? And then obviously it expanded over time, and the reason it expanded is because of certain events in Russian history, right? We have to talk about the certain gifts that was given from Russia, right, to Ukraine, right? For example, we talk about you'll hear what we've been talking about here the last 8 years, right? Crimea, right? Crimea was a gift from Khrushchev, right? If people go look it up, the 1954 the transfer of Crimea was a gift to Ukraine for Russian and Ukrainian unity. Okay, now Stalin. He's the Western Ukrainian guy, right? He's the one that stopped Holodomor, right? People try to blame Stalin for it, but it was actually Hitler's occupation of Soviet Ukraine and Western Ukraine that started Holodomor, right? The Great Famine and all that stuff, right? So Stalin comes up with his gift as a peace offering to Poland to let Russia keep the land in Western in Western Ukraine. If you look at pictures of Lviv, right, there's a lot of mixture of Soviet and Polish architecture in Lviv.
Wow,
that's where that comes from, Okay, and then you have northeast Ukraine, kind of eastern Ukraine, right, where we have the two rebel states, Donetsk and Luhansk, right, where that's the Donbas region, right? That's the Donbas region. Okay, and that's where all the fighting's been going on. You have the Russian separatists that say we're still Russian, right, and all that. That was a gift from Lenin, right? Because Lenin acquired that land through another side battle, etc. After the Tsar Nicholas was assassinated, right? He acquired that land. Well, guess what? We're going to give it to Ukraine as a peace offering, right? Like, you're still with us. That's how Ukraine got to the size it is now. Now, amongst all of that going on, there was a whole lot of corruption going on.
And what kind of corruption is that? Like, if
We're talking market manipulation. I mean, the Russians are the starters of the oligarchy, right? That whole bit, right? We can get into that, but that's a whole other story another day. Because
the Russians are the starters of that. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean that's a story that you would have to go down a rabbit hole almost 100 years deep, even before Lenin, right? We're talking like Tsar Nicholas I. When we start talking about the oligarchy and how that was instituted and all that good stuff. That's another show for another day, because we'll be here all day for sure.
So what is NATO's involvement in this conflict right now, currently?
Really, their only involvement is supply of goods. That's really it. But that might even create a problem. Depends on how Putin looks at it, because he did say no interference, right? No interference of any kind, right?
So,
that's true. That's true, Savory. He did say that.
That's true. He did say that and challenge that. But when I'm thinking of NATO, right, I want to go a little deeper. What's NATO's ties, right? I'm curious about NATO's ties to the corruption in Ukraine and all that, because I'm skeptical of NATO and I'm just learning about them. So when I ask the question right here, right, where I want to go to educate myself and learn more, and for the audience, is what is NATO's, I guess, point of interest in this?
I don't think when we talk about NATO, we have to talk about the United States.
Okay, you see, that's where I wanted to go. Okay, perfect.
Right?
Okay.
So here's the thing with the whole NATO bit, right? And this is my personal opinion strictly, but the way everything is strategically set up, it's what it is. All of the NATO nations are front lines to Russia, right? Because we have to think about the Cold War at this point, right? How we helped the Mujahideen, right, in 81, right, with the Soviet-Afghan War, which the Mujahideen ended up turning out to become Al-Qaeda. Okay, Osama bin Laden, right? Osama bin Laden was the leader of the Mujahideen, right? So we go from there, helping the Afghans, right? Which should have been in anyway. Afghan was an ally on the Russian border. See, so these little tidbits of these nations around the Russian border are all NATO nations. Right. And then after a period of time, right? After a period of time, they ended up falling, right? We ended up losing grace with Iran, right? Because in 78, the Ayatollah took over, right? Ayatollah Khomeini, right? So we lost Iran as an ally, right? And they went to a straight theocratic state. We lost Afghanistan, right? In that mixed, right?
And they were all previously owned by the USSR, right? Or
that is
sometime,
at some point in time they were. That is correct, right? Okay. The Afghanistan was doing its own thing. Pakistan, all that, right? Now, if we look around the rim, right, of the USSR before they broke off into their separate countries, right? You have former Romania, which is NATO, right? You got Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, right?
Literally surrounding the country of Russia.
Exactly. The only buffer in the northeast of Europe is Belarus, and that's the buffer between Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. Right.
So is Putin's concern when it comes to NATO and Ukraine the way NATO is assisting Ukraine's kind of expansion? Is that part of it?
Well, they're not going to expanding NATO. Yes, it would put NATO on it, just like Putin said in his speech. It would put NATO on his front doorstep.
Yes, Savory. If you look at it, like if what he's describing is they're literally surrounding that front part of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So if they take over, quote unquote, if NATO takes over Ukraine, they're completely surrounded. They got
Mm-hmm.
no gas. They got no
Yep.
strength. They got no dog in the fight. Is what Putin is probably
And
afraid
it
of.
can be an orchestrated attack with the other nations and everybody on board, where Russia
Yep.
definitely doesn't stand a chance, which is why Putin referenced the nuclear weapons, where it's a lose-lose, he said. But
Well,
it's
no.
like, you know,
Here's the thing. I would hold back on the nuclear though, right? Right. As far as nuclear weapon, he can go nuclear, but it doesn't have to be a weapon. See,
Yes, that's
follow me
true.
a second.
and
Follow
he's
me a
very
second.
strategic though. So let me hear
Right.
this out, yeah, because I know
Follow me
the
a
man
second,
is
right?
strategic.
Now we talked about these sanctions, right? Y'all talked about sanctions a little while ago, and you
Mhm.
know, et cetera. Putin's already 5 steps ahead of NATO and everybody else, right? We have to keep in mind Russia is the second leading exporter of crude oil in the world.
That's right.
They were part of
Mm.
OPEC Plus at one time, right? Which is the nations that allied with OPEC but weren't part of it as exporters. In 2020, Russia broke away from OPEC Plus. They're like, no, we don't like this deal. We're Gucci. So they went and did their thing. Now let's bring Gazprom into play. Gazprom is the company that built the Nord Stream and the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Okay. Now, Germany was already getting natural gas, right? From Gazprom, from the Nord Stream pipeline, and other
Mhm.
places in Europe was getting beneficiaries of that. Now let's think about this a minute. Russia has 24% of the world's natural gas. That's the most of any country in the world.
That's a fourth almost. Wow, in the world. Wow.
So think about this minute. What sanctions when you are the energy czar of Europe and Asia? What sanctions? So you want to go nuclear? Okay, let's dump crude oil like they did 2 years ago with Saudi. Think about what happened when they dumped all that oil. Our gas prices shot up to $5-6. In normal areas, California shot up to $10. That's all he's got to do. Guess what? Boom, we're dumping oil. Game over. That would be a nuke
Wow.
in the
Because he has
economy.
power to mess up with the whole supply and the
Yep.
whole trade deal. He has a lot of
And
power because of what he holds, 25%
and
of
from
it.
what we saw yesterday, Savory, remember when Trump was talking to NATO, the head of NATO, he said that we're paying all this money to protect Germany from Russia, but Germany's getting 70% of their oil from Russia.
From
Yep.
Russia. Yeah, exactly. That's what he was
See?
challenging. Yeah. Good stuff,
See?
Macho, bringing full circle. Yeah. Which is wow. That goes to show, like, okay, what
It's
this is
crazy, bro.
deeper than what people like. You're giving us that background
Mhm.
on the economics, how Putin is thinking, and all that. But that also leads me to this. What's your thoughts on the timing of this, right? In connection to 2014 Crimea? Right. So
All
the
right.
Crimea coming into the Trump presidency, but now the timing is here where this is happening again.
Let's go back.
Can you walk us through some
Let's
of
go
that?
back a
Because
little bit.
that's
Let's go back
okay.
a little bit. Let's go back before the annexation of Crimea. We have to talk about Euromaidan, right?
Okay.
Euromaidan was the Orange Revolution that basically kicked out the corruption. Now, I'm going to make some of your listeners uncomfortable, but they need to hear this. Ukraine still have holdovers from Nazis. Majority of the Ukrainian military is neo-Nazis. Y'all can fact
What?
check me. They're the Azov Battalion. They are.
So hold up. This is
Yeah,
what
yeah,
Putin said in his speech. So he's literal. So
Yeah,
Putin is
he was
literally.
literal. Yes. If those of you
Oh.
guys that are
It wasn't
listening,
hyperbole like Western media kind of calling people
no,
neo-Nazi. You're talking about this
no,
is literal.
no, it's literal.
Wow.
If you look up Azov Battalion, AZOV, Azov Battalion, straight up, they are the paramilitary wing of the Ukrainian armed forces. They are neo-Nazis. They are basically the National Guard for Ukraine, and they also
Wow.
act as special ops. They have been fighting.
Yo.
They have been fighting in the Donbass against the LPR and the DPR this whole time since 2008. That's who they've been fighting. They've been fighting the neo-Nazis.
Wow.
So, which goes back to ask, why would we fund neo-Nazis? And this is just not. I mean, if the military is running neo-Nazi, think about the government. Now we start talking about corruption.
But how?
Right?
I'm confused though. Listen.
Okay.
How is it that their neo-Nazi imprint or footprint in here in this military when they were probably the most drastically affected by Hitler? 7 million people were killed.
They were holdovers. They were holdovers, and they just kept that ideology. That's why your Western Ukrainians, watch what happens as Russia advances past Kyiv. Watch what happens. The resistance is going to get more fierce because those people in Western Ukraine, we got to remember they're either from Moldova, they're from Poland, or they're from Lithuania, right? So they're a different type, a completely different type of.
They hate Russia, apparently.
Yes,
right?
Western Ukraine despises Russia.
Yeah. So Dennis Prager made it like this: that the other 35, there are 40. He says there are approximately 40 million people that live in Ukraine. About 5 million love and adore and support Russia, but the other 35 million absolutely hates Russia.
I think that number may be a little bit off, to be honest.
Okay.
Right? Because I mean, we have to think too, right? There's including the city of Kyiv and its outer oblast. You're probably talking easily 6 million people, just in the Kyiv oblast alone.
They're
who support Russia.
They support Russia.
Well, I'm just saying population wise. He brought the number 35 million. I'm saying in the city of Kyiv, the capital city, right? Or I should say capital city and its oblast. And oblast is basically it's metropolitan. That's what they call metropolitan, right? That's what metropolitan is, right? There's at least 6 million. So you think about 6 million of that 35 hate Russia. I mean, really think about that. Lviv, its population is right at 1.5 million, right? And it's oblast, right?
Yeah.
And then Kiriri, that I think they're like 3 million and they're oblast. So I mean, you have to think about like 35 million hate it, but then you like I said, I would love to see where he got that data from.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm just bringing that to the forefront for the like a visual illustration of there's a large community of people that hate Russia.
Oh yeah.
And Mach, I think that's really good you bring that up because I have something on this, right? I'm also trying to understand the reality of those people in Ukraine who are more connected to their Russian roots, right? To the motherland of Russia. I'm very curious when I think of if we can link this Crimea, right? What happened there and the people and how most of them wanted that, from what I'm coming to understand, and what's happening now. Did most of these people where he's invading now through Kyiv and where he's at, do a lot of those people want that? And it's the government in Ukraine fighting them off? Like, where are the people in this when it comes to those borders?
And that's mixed, right? Because I've been posting a lot of that stuff on my Telegram channel as it's coming in, and from my emails from my friends that actually live in Ukraine. That's been sending me a whole bunch of pictures and videos of different things. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, is some of them just walk around nonchalantly, right? Some of the videos I got, some people just walk around nonchalantly, like waving at the Russian soldiers, like, "Hey, what's up?" Like, dang, B. Okay. that's Gucci. They just chilling. I have one video. What one tank column was coming through Kharkiv, right? And the guy pulled over the side of the road and was saluting the Russian military coming through. I'm like, what? Let me find out. Let me find out, bruh.
Wow.
Like, yeah, so it's like it's probably a mixed bag, bro. You know what I'm saying when it comes to what the people want. But Putin, honestly, is after the government because the government literally is ran by oligarchs and neo-Nazis. That is. I mean, but
Roger, what's his strategy here? When you tell me he's after the government, what's his strategy though? Like, how is he gonna expose the corruption, reveal it? If that's his agenda? What is this the right method, and what's his
He wants to.
strategy.
I think ultimately he wants to eradicate the Nazism, right? And let's go back, right? When we were talking about Euromaidan, right? When all that happened, and the Euromaidan got the revolution they wanted, right? They got the revolution they wanted. They got Poroshenko in office, right? They got Poroshenko in office. That's what they wanted because he was pro-Russian, right? Poroshenko was pro-Russian.
That was the former president, right?
That was the president. That was the president before. That was the president before Zelensky. Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And y'all remember that moment? And all I gotta say is these three words: "Son of a bitch." Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. He told Poroshenko.
I wanna get into that too, but yeah, go ahead.
Right. Poroshenko, right, was told that Shokin was corrupt. Told him that Shokin was corrupt to fire him. Right? Shokin was fired. And not even so much later, Poroshenko was lined up to be the president again. And all of a sudden he loses to a comedian.
Yeah, to a TV star who pretended to be president that became president in Ukraine.
Right?
That's crazy.
Right?
So I gotta yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. So let's follow that timeline a second, right? Zelensky gets into office. Okay, let's bring it back to America a second. Right? Impeachment number 2, Ukraine gate, right? All over a phone call. A phone call. You need to check the corruption in your country, right? They were on him, weren't they? They're just straight on him. Think about that a minute. Why would you be straight up on him trying to find out corruption if our money is going towards corruption, right? Why would you stop a president or anybody of any authority, right, from our millions of dollars going to a corrupt regime? And as we
I feel like Ukraine came out of nowhere during his presidency. Yeah.
Right. Now, as we have seen with the current events, Zelensky is that corrupt guy. I mean, he locked up Poroshenko on treason charges and released him 4 days later. Right? So here's where we are. Here's where we are right now. Right? Putin is like, you know what? I'm tired. I'm tired of you fighting my people that support me in the Donbass. We already was in Crimea, right? So people are saying it's an invasion of Ukraine. No, you can't invade something you've already occupied. You've already occupied Ukraine. I don't care if it's 1 square mile. You have occupied Ukraine.
So you don't think this is an invasion?
No, because you can't invade something you're already occupying.
But how much of the
that's like America. That's like America going into Puerto Rico is what you're saying.
Pretty much.
I got it.
But hold up, they didn't have control over that. Let me push back on that. But they didn't have control, right? I think the issue here, like U.S. has, you can argue has almost control over Puerto Rico in many ways, right? Even though they have their own governance stuff but did they have what did Russia, when you say they were there, like in what way?
They were already there in the government. You already had military troops on the ground. They even had Belarusian troops on the ground in Sevastopol and Simferopol.
So in a military occupation?
Military, they were already there.
There were people there. They even have leaders in there.
Yep. So that's why when that annexation of Crimea that went over like butter, that's why. It was they were already there. They was like, well, take over. We're done.
The biggest takeaway I got from the Ukraine on Fire documentary is that they had a vote in Crimea, and that they wanted to be a part of the Russian government.
Yeah.
And then the whole argument with the previous president was saying that was illegal. That was it's not a legal annexation, but again, because he was worried about that, and the way I looked at it is why he also lost his presidency to a comedian, because he wasn't paying attention to what right?
Now with Poroshenko, there was a whole nother issue, right? Because not only was he fighting corruption within Ukraine, right? Because remember, Poroshenko is pro-Russia, right? Poroshenko and Putin go back, like snapbacks, right?
That's true.
So because that's who Euromaidan wanted in there, because they wanted still Russian influence, if not be part of Russia again. But then they basically overthrew Poroshenko. Right.
Oh, I see what's going on here. Now I got it.
Poroshenko was there from what year to what year?
from
When did he come in? I
2013.
guess I want to know.
I think he was there like in 20. I know he was there in
2014 till because Euromod didn't happen in 13.
So coordinated with
14.
the Crimea situation.
No, it was like 2019. I think it was. No, Zelensky's been president 2 years, 3 years now, 2 years.
Like 2-3
So,
years.
well, he was president when Trump was there. That's for sure.
Oh, he was?
So it's been about
Zelensky was
that's the
president.
phone call.
Okay.
That's the phone call.
That's the phone call. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
I got a question. I got two more questions, and let's bring this home. Is the Biden family compromised in this situation? Two, did that interaction or that engagement compromise our American government?
Oh yeah, it compromised them big time. I mean, come on, we're literally doing business with neo-Nazis, straight up. Like, you know what I'm saying?
And the Biden family did. The Biden family was
the
working with
whole thing, Pelosi, all of them, John Kerry, whole thing. They all have been doing business with neo-Nazis.
So when they're calling Trump a fascist or a neo-Nazi supporter, sympathize, they're really talking about themselves.
Yeah,
I love this. I love this.
I mean, that's what it is. So yeah, I mean, it makes the Biden administration complicit, right? Because their fingerprints are literally all over everything. I mean, if we want to get even a little bit more sinister into this, let's go into Hunter Biden a second.
Yeah,
right.
let's do
let's
that.
go into Hunter Biden a second, right? Because we know he was on Burisma. That's old news, right?
Yeah,
but it gets deeper than that, right? There's this guy in Romania, right? His name is Georges Popoviciu. Okay, Georges Popoviciu, right? Georges Popoviciu owns the land that the Romanian mall sits on right now. What sits underneath that mall? A natural gas deposit. Okay.
Ooh.
This guy, Georges Popoviciu, sat right here and got caught up, right, in that nonsense of stealing that land, right? And he ran to London. Now, him and Hunter Biden had already made the deal for the land, but then Popoviciu got in trouble, so he went to London. Peep game, check this out. Does the name Louis Freeh sound familiar to you? Maybe not.
Louis
Freeh.
Louis Freeh.
No, I personally don't.
Okay. Louis Freeh, okay, was the Attorney General of the United States at one point. Okay. He was the lawyer for Georges Popoviciu to bring him back to justice in Romania. Now, why do I mention this guy's name? Louis Freeh is on the board of directors for the Beau Biden Foundation.
So, wait.
Wow.
Okay. So
yeah, you're tying the
recap that.
involvements here.
Yeah, recap that. So, Louis Freeh, former Attorney General, represents
Georges Popoviciu, the Romanian real estate guy that basically got caught up in that land grant deal that went sour, and he got felony charges. He's in prison right now still, I think. Louis Freeh was involved with bringing him to justice in Ukraine. That was Hunter Biden's deal buddy in Romania.
Oh, my
for the
God.
land underneath the Romanian mall that has natural gas below.
Damn, there's a lot of underlying things when it comes to these situations, which is like, you got the Western media one where you got Putin saying something, then, it's like a lot of conflict. Do you know, I want to shout out right here, because I've been hearing some about this. Any clue as to why Russia wanted to capture Chernobyl? Is that how you say that?
Chernobyl,
okay.
Well, reactor number 4 is still radioactive. It's highly radioactive. I'm just leaving that right.
So that's
there.
a plant. So that's a plant there.
That was the plant that exploded back in the 80s. And there's actually a Chernobyl exclusion zone that is like 60. Like you can't live within 60 kilometers of this plant because it was so. I mean, this explosion was so like massive, like literally it killed everything in Chernobyl, like within a month. It was that bad. The radioactivity was that bad. But reactor number 4 is still very radioactive. So the question is, why were they in Chernobyl? Were they going around and picking up radioactive material at the reactor. Don't know. We don't have footage because obviously you can't get in there, because if you try to get into the Chernobyl exclusion zone, you might get shot either by Belarus or Russia. Just saying.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, yeah, why would they come through there? I mean, they actually shot out, the Ukrainian armed forces shot out one of the bridges coming from Chernobyl so the Russian soldiers could not come over because they had been over in the exclusion zone. So
Okay. Interesting. So I have something. I don't know if Macho has something before I shift, but I'm curious to get your take on what's happening now. I know you're getting updates. You know people on the ground. So as far as how do you see this unfold? So Macho, if you wanted to keep it here, feel free to interject here before we go here. But
No,
I'm curious to see.
The last question that I had here was, how does this affect America in the short and long term?
in the short term, there's really not going to be really any effects of the short term. I'm looking 6 months down the road, right?
Why is that?
Because once Putin gets control of Ukraine, right, he has control of the Donbass, right? The Donbass has the.
So you're not with Nixon that he's not going to succeed. You are definitely
banking
on him succeeding. Yeah.
He's at the least. He will get the Donbass at the least. And that's what's really most important to him, right? Because the Donbass has the largest natural gas reserve in Eastern Europe.
Got it.
He needs that gas for Nord Stream 2.
There it is.
So sanctions mean nothing.
Nope, zero.
Like what's the sanction?
Because here's the thought I was thinking of the other day, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, is that no matter how much sanctions, by the time it even hits him, but by the time the Russian people go down to the citizen, even feels a blip of those sanctions, he already got all the resources. He got all the natural.
He succeeded.
He's already got everything he needs.
Yep.
He's 5 steps ahead.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a great question, Macho. That leads me to where I wanted to go as well. So with what's happening now, right? What's worst case scenario in your mind, and what's best case scenario? And then quick follow up from there. I'm just curious to get your personal take on, I guess, your opinion on this, on what Russia's doing, where you agree, disagree. But
best case scenario. Putin gets what he wants. He gets Ukraine. He gets,
that's best case scenario. Let me get this straight. You think for the world because it's exposing the corruption and it's moving us in a better direction, yeah?
Right. Yeah. And worst case scenario, he starts firing off on everybody because someone itched his trigger finger. Because Putin's that dude. Like,
but there's no real long-term interest for if he does that, right? Like, it's just, it wouldn't benefit even his own citizens if he goes to like
if he hits a NATO nation. No, it wouldn't benefit him at all. It would cripple him.
Yeah,
it would cripple him because
he's not going beyond Ukraine. You don't think he's going to the right? Because that's not strategic. That doesn't sound like Putin. He's 5 steps ahead usually in these.
Yeah, because if he was to go into a world war scenario, he'd be done. He'd be done economically. He'd be done because the first thing they would do, they'd blow up both Nord Stream pipelines.
So we got something for you here, Travis, who's probably going to defer with you on some of these ideas. You don't see no benefit in Russia not doing this, Ukraine existing how it always existed, and just keeping those borderlines, Russia minding their business and Ukraine doing their thing. Is there any benefit in Ukraine existing?
Well, here's the thing. Now, here's the question, right? We got to remember, actual Ukraine is not the actual size of Ukraine today. We have to understand this, right? These were lands that were annexed into Ukraine from Russia. These lands was Russian lands before it was Ukraine. So we have to think about it from that context. Historically, that land, like I said, around what it be Kiev Oblast and about another 20, 30 square miles outside of that, right? According to the old maps, was all Russian, right?
But to play devil's advocate, I think by that logic, couldn't a lot of nations play that game? Like, hey,
not like
they
Ukraine,
added
though.
this.
Like Ukraine, because you got to remember, majority of your European nations, right? They one of the major reasons you have the borders in Europe is because of slave trading. That's why a lot of the borders in Europe exist, right? So You know what I mean? It wasn't like a country had this, had this little pot of land and said, "Oh, we're gonna go annex here and take here." With Ukraine is different because Ukraine was within that boat. If you look at a map and look at Kyiv, right? And it's about that big on the map of Ukraine, and then all this stuff that Russia said we're giving you. Russia gave them that land. That wasn't Ukraine's land in the first place, right? Russia gave them that land. That's the problem. That's the other side of it, right? You know what? I think I still have the photo on my. Can you show pictures on your background here?
Yeah, I got something here. Okay, let me see what you got.
All right, okay. Actually, I do have it. Let me forward it to you real quick, so you get an understanding of what I'm talking about here.
We have another map here of Ukraine, Russia. I don't know if you need something more in depth there.
There it is.
We have another.
All right, you should have it right now. I just sent it to you.
All right.
This right here is like one of the starting points when I have people, when we're talking about Ukraine and all that stuff. This is the starting point to understand what, you know what I'm saying, the geography and the history.
You sent you got that, Macho?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in the thing right now. Let me just go ahead and share.
So what I'm understanding, you're saying the history when it comes to the Ukraine and Russia is not the same as what other nations can claim, right? Like,
Right,
hey, we
that's
had this
correct.
before. You're saying the history is different. Okay.
Yep. So there's the map. So here's what I'm talking about. See that little area in red? That was actually Ukraine in 1654. All those lands you see around that in the blue, that is what Lenin gave to Ukraine. That to the where I talked about Lviv and Stalin, he gave that portion, right, to Ukraine, right? And then you have Khrushchev with Crimea in 54. They gave that land to Ukraine, right? So it's different, right? It's not, you know what I'm saying, a country came in and annexed outwards. Ukraine got land to form their country from Russia.
Why is that bad though? And why do we need to take? Why does Russia need to take that back? What makes Russia entitled? I'm playing devil's advocate here to take that back though.
Well, it's not. I don't think it's an entitlement. I think it's I guess you call it a spoiling of a gift, right? You know what I'm saying? We gave you something, you can't take care of it, so we're going to take it back, almost like an Indian giver. That would be my premise, right, behind it. So I mean, again, right? I mean, once we got to the expansion where we are, you know, post the 54 Crimea edition, right? Ukraine wasn't, you know, we still had the neo-Nazis to the east, to the west, right? Out in Lviv and out in that area, right? And then Holodomor happened, all that stuff, you know, the famine. And then all this corruption just came out of nowhere. Where it came from, no one really knows. Like some of the historians I've talked to over there, like, we don't know where the corruption came from. It just like, you know what I mean? Sometimes you can point a moment in time where the corruption started. They're like, we don't know. It just came out of nowhere. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. So like so it would benefit in a way to, like I said, take that land back. But what is the other motive besides natural gas, right? What's the other motive? And that part I can't figure out. That part I can't figure out what it is after looking at everything, right? So
yeah.
But that map, I'm telling you, that map, if you just look up those, you know, look up what happened, and I'm sure Macho will forward you a picture of that map too. But that's why I tell a lot of people to start a lot of times when it comes to Ukraine, because they're different. They're built from, you know what I'm saying, the outside in, not the inside out.
Got it. Okay. And then you add the corruption to that. This is why people feel like, you know, and it's unfortunate, right? Because what Michigan is saying here, best case scenario, to me, cannot be massive loss of civilian lives. Russian taking
Right.
over Ukraine will result in hundreds of thousands of lives lost. I'm with him there. So that's what makes this,
Right,
war is
right.
always
It's tough.
complicated. It's tough, and but in all honesty, what we discussed today, I'm realizing as a point of view, the West is honestly not giving us, right? Whether right or wrong, this is what we need to hear to at least think through it honestly, right? This is what I love. And I tell Macho all the time, right? We're not saying that is the official narrative and we have this is but if you don't have at least this part of the story, which again, you gave us historically accurate things for us to assess and make our own decisions on what we think on the situation.
Right.
But with this, I say this should be part of the conversation. I'm not saying this should justify everything that's happening from Russia,
No,
right?
never. Right.
But it should be part of the conversation. That's all I'm saying, so people can know, why we're having this conversation. It's not about Russia being right. It's about realizing that Russia has a kind of voice and kind of agenda behind this outside of what the West media is telling us, So
and that's the biggest problem when it comes when it comes to geopolitical issues, right? I always urge my American friends, like, don't look abroad, right? I mean, even if you look at the moderate leaning Al Jazeera, right? They're pretty good, right? And when I talk Al Jazeera English, we're talking Al Jazeera Arabic, but they do translate into English, right? Because they usually lay it down straight. You know what I mean? And you start you start reading like the Kyiv Post, right? They're pretty they're center right leaning, right? You find these little outlets to actually listen and watch and see what's going on, and you'll see something completely different than what the media is telling you. Like literally, I know we got to move on real quick, so I'm leave this to 30 seconds, right?
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
We always heard here, Trump bad, Trump so bad, right? Mean tweets, right?
Yeah.
But then overseas, you notice how they treated Trump, right? You see how they treated him, right? They treated him a lot differently than the media treated him here. Right? That's something to think about, right?
Yep.
Because they're seeing it from the outside. Like, what are you Americans doing? This guy is like legit. Like, he's not playing with y'all, but Trump bad, right? White supremacy.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful analogy to give us right there, to give people a good picture of like, look, you got to open your eyes to different perspectives out there, man. But Macho, let's transition to our final segment here, Sip on Facts.
Well, first off, just want to thank Roderick for joining. Thank you for your input. We value you, and the show wouldn't be the same without you today. Thank you, bro.
Yeah. I appreciate you joining us, man.
Y'all been doing this for a minute, so I'm that fly on the wall.
No, this is one for the books, man. This is one for the books. By the way, I want to also say for this transition, my man's TikTok right here. All right, so is that, I don't know if I got both of them there, all right? I don't know if I'm missing one, but
we got his TikTok there, and
also, are we missing anyone?
Yeah, also, Man of Justice 007 is my main, and then those are my two backups.
Also, where could they find you? You have a radio show and a podcast, so
yes, you can if on any podcast platform, you can catch it, Southern Liberty. And if you want to listen to me live, if you are in South Florida, I am on public radio in Collier, Lee, Hendry, and North of Dade County, Florida. So if you're in those particular areas, you can holler at me, listen to me there, or you can go to live.bpmg.us. I have a live chat there that's also running concurrently with the radio show, so y'all can tap into that too.
Awesome. Nice. Thank you again. We do appreciate you a lot. Hopefully we can do two parts of this if we like. So we appreciate you joining, man.
We look forward to working with you in the future, Roderick. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
No doubt. Appreciate y'all, fam.
All right.
So what we wanted to do today, I don't know if you got something, Macho, you can also share, but I want to highlight a few things that stood out to me, man. This is like, all right. Two quick thoughts for Sip on Facts. We're doing it a bit different from what Man of Justice today shared with us. NATO nations are all over Russian borders. Right, that's something to take into account. Just a quick for your Sip on Facts, for you to realize that this is the threat coming, how the perception from the other side is looking at it. And another real important one, which was, this is something that could take anyone who's interested
That was big
on
for me.
a research rabbit hole loop right here for them to kind of like, discuss this more, right? So neo-Nazis military is now Ukraine National Guard, right? That's a big claim. Again, I don't know the validity behind this claim, and I'm not doubting because I know he's pretty historically accurate, but I'm the type that wants to kind of dig in myself a bit more to really see what's up with this claim. But yeah, those are two things that stood out to me, bro.
Huge. Yeah, that was a big one for me. And the fact that he believes that Russia will be successful, especially for Damas, because that's where the natural gas is. That what the Biden family, what the Biden family did, and the Pelosi's and all the establishment politicians have compromised our American government. That's another thing for today's Sip on Facts. Guys, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining the conversation. Thanks for being here. Roderick, man of justice, thanks for being here. We appreciate you guys. I hope you have a great weekend. I'm going to put this condensed version out tonight, so be on the lookout. We'll see you guys on Monday.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, guy.